We're back here, whole 9 yards, on a Thursday afternoon. Obviously, pretty good football year. Going to get into some baseball stuff here with the football offseason. Pretty big news in the MLB. Trevor Bauer, this happened at least a few days ago. Trevor Bauer signed with the Dodgers. I'm assuming you have the contract in front of you. I actually don't have the contract in front of me.
Yeah. So it was a 3-year, $102 million contract. The first season, he's going to get $40 million. Second season, $45 million. And then the third season was, $17 million. But there's an opt-out after the first season and an opt-out after the second season. I would say the only way he opts out would be if he has another amazing season this year and then wants the long-term contract, because him getting, the next two seasons, $40 million and $45 million, he'd be the highest paid player in the MLB out of anyone, not just pitchers. So if he has a bad year this year, then he'll stay in and make $45 million in 2022. If he has a really good year and thinks he can get like a 5-year contract or 6-year contract, he'll be 31 at the beginning of next season, so I guess we'll have to see. But if he could get like $30 million a year for like 5 years or something like that, I think you'd almost rather have that than a $45 million contract and then a $17 million. Again, you could opt out after the $45 million in 2022 also, but I think it depends on what happens this year with him. But even anyways, he's making $40 million at least guaranteed for this one season, which that was his goal all along, was to be the highest paid pitcher, and not only the highest paid pitcher, he's the highest paid player in the MLB, which I did not see coming. I knew that he was probably going to get a short-term deal, but I didn't think it was going to be $40 million and then possibly $45 million. Thought maybe around 36, like what Garrett Cole got, but $40 million I was pretty surprised about.
Yeah, if you're a Dodgers fan, I guess, the best case scenario, so there's an opt-out after the first year. You'd almost hope you hope he plays, obviously, like a Cy Young winner. So you'd almost hope he wants to opt out the first year. I don't know if the Dodgers would sign him long-term. I don't think they would, but...
No, I don't think they would either, because...
But if he doesn't opt out after the first year, then that means he, probably didn't have a Cy Young caliber year.
Or that the market just wasn't there for him, which is possible, because, again, he'll be 31. The best he'd get, he's not going to get like a 7-year, 8-year contract. He'd probably get, at the best, a 5-year contract. So would he want that if it's like $30 million, $32 million a year? I would take that, because that's just longer security, because he's never going to get a big contract again in his career, because even if he finishes out this contract with the Dodgers, he'll be 33. He's not going to get a long-term contract no matter how good he is. So if he really wants a long-term contract, this is his only chance to get it. If not, then he's going to keep doing like 1 to 2 year deals. And that is based off if he even is still going to be a really good pitcher, because despite him winning Cy Young last year, it was only in 60 games. I think he only made 11 starts. Before that, in his whole career, he's really only had one really good year. That was 2018, where he was an all-star. I think he had an ERA in like the mid-2s. But other than that, he's kind of been like a high 3s, 4 ERA kind of pitcher. So he's never really been like a star pitcher. And if you were to put last season over 162, the odds of him still having a 1.73 ERA are pretty slim. He'd probably be in the 2s. Now, and also, they were playing in division last year, so he was playing the AL Central and NL Central. Those two divisions were those were definitely the two worst divisions in baseball last year. The team-wise and then offensively-wise, like none of those offenses, I don't even think were close to being top 10. So maybe the White Sox, but that's only like one team. Him being in the NL West, most likely playing like a full schedule where they're actually playing teams that aren't just in the division. And even so, the NL West is a much better division than the NL Central is. So we'll have to see what kind of pitcher he really is. I don't think he's that kind of pitcher. I think he's maybe an all-star, but I don't think he's like a top 5 pitcher in the MLB.
Yeah. We'll end up seeing what happens. But yeah, no, that's probably true. If it was a 162 game season, he definitely doesn't have a 1.73 ERA. So the main team that missed out on him was the Mets. I mean, what do you think? Do you have any? What do you think they're gonna do with missing out on Bauer? Or I mean, what is that? What are the implications for the Mets on missing out on Bauer?
I think it probably works out better for them. I don't think he would have been like I think they said the contract would have been like the same. I think it was a higher overall value in just the total money, but I think they didn't have 40 million and then 45 million. I think they were 40, 40 and then like 25 or something like that, whatever however it works out. And I think he went for the deal that got him 40 and 45 from the Dodgers, which I don't think is the worst thing for the Mets because you have DeGrom, you have Carrasco, you have Stroman. Syndergaard's going to come back. I mean, we'll see how he is off Tommy John, but he's coming back. You possibly have like Seth Lugo, who I think is better in the bullpen, but they've kind of added some pieces, so maybe he's going to be a starter, maybe he's in the bullpen. But they definitely have a pretty good rotation. Adding Bauer would definitely help, but for that kind of money, and maybe there probably would have been opt-outs also, but I think it's better that they didn't get him, and I think them just attempting to get him, I think just shows that the new ownership is willing to get guys that would have been the highest paid player in the MLB for 2 straight years. So I don't think it's the worst thing that they missed out on him.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It depends on who are they going to grab? Are they willing to? I mean, I don't know who's even available right now still. Either in the trade market or in free agency, but
there's guys like James Paxton who's available. Jake Arrieta, they said they were talking to Jake Arrieta. I mean, if it's between Paxton and Arrieta, I'd rather Paxton, but I don't know what the money difference is. I would assume it'd only be a 1-year contract, maybe a 2-year with like a club option or something like that. But it would probably only be like $8 million for a pitcher like that. And I think if it's between Paxton and Arrieta, I'd definitely go Paxton, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think missing out on Bauer for the Mets is the worst thing, but it's just going to depend on what they get. It's going to depend on what they get instead of Bauer. If they get, I mean, if it was like just Paxton, I mean, I don't know. Wouldn't you rather just have Bauer? But I mean, obviously you'd rather have Bauer, but even considering the money, you'd probably still rather have Bauer if all they got was Paxton. Right? Or
yeah, I mean, I think the rotation's good enough to the point where it's not like if they add Bauer, then they turn into like a really good rotation. I think they're still like if DeGrom's probably the best pitcher in baseball, Carrasco is like he's a pretty good pitcher. Like he's a borderline all-star. Like I think his career ERA is in like the mid 3s, so that's pretty good. Stroman, he can be, pretty good at times, but he's not like terrible or anything like that. And then Syndergaard, again, coming back. If they were at Paxton, he's a guy who at times could be a really good pitcher, and then other times he definitely struggles. But if he could be in the 3s, maybe low 4s, that's not the worst thing. So, I mean, if they were to sign Bauer, they'd go over the luxury tax, which, that does matter somewhat, especially if you're a repeat offender, which, maybe next year when they sign Lindor, then maybe sign someone else, they'd probably be, again, ahead of that luxury tax. So, I don't know. I think there's so many factors that go into it, and I don't think it's the worst thing that they missed out on them.
Did you want to get into
the standings, like the projections? Yeah, so Bakota came out with projections. I think it was like 3 days ago. So we'll start by division. In the AL East, do you want to go from top team to lowest team?
Sure. I mean, I'll do whatever.
All right. So in the AL East, they had the New York Yankees at 97.5 wins and then 64.5 losses. So I guess do we want to do over under or do we?
I'm down for over under.
All right. So we'll do over
on the
under.
win count. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So 97.5.
I'll go over. I mean, I think they're one of, if not the most talented team in baseball. So.
Yeah, I think
the AL East is pretty. I mean, I think it'll be ending up being pretty difficult. Like, I think it'll be a pretty good division, but I still think they'll probably get over 97.5.
Yeah, I think it will be the division's definitely. It's like good. I think the Rays have fallen off, which we'll see when we get into their win projection. But 97.5, I think they can get over that. And I think their rotations, if they added Kluber, they added Jameson Tyone, they have Garrett Cole, they lost Tanaka, they most likely are losing Paxton. Doesn't seem like they're going to bring him back. So they're going to have a lot of young guys in that rotation, at least in the back end. So I think they could definitely, as long as the rotation holds up somewhat, their offense is good enough to win games, and they're just a better team than most teams. So, yeah, I think they can get over 97.5. Next team, so they have Tampa being second in the division, not Toronto. They have Tampa at 86.5 wins.
I think 86.5 sounds about right, but I would go with the over. Like, it still wouldn't surprise me if Tampa got 90 wins at all. I'm not sure what you think, but
yeah, no, it's definitely, they're a team that you always think are going to have less wins, but then they always end up with like 90 wins. But
I mean, they're similar to they're like the Pacers of like the MLB, except like better.
Yeah, like they don't have like a star, but like they always seem to be in the playoffs and always have somewhat of a good record. I'm going to go under, but I think it's probably like 8. I think they probably win like 86 games, maybe 85. I just don't see where their pitching's come from or is going to come from. I mean, they traded Snell. They lost Charlie Morton. They still have Tyler Glass now, but he's been, he was really good 2 years ago, but then he got injured. And then last year he was somewhat inconsistent. So if he can put a full season together, maybe, but even still, they don't have much starting pitching. And their offense, it always seems like they have someone who just steps up and puts up big numbers. Even though their total offense last year wasn't amazing, I don't know. I see this team definitely struggling a good amount, and especially coming down from last year. I think their pitching's just going to really hurt. So I'm going to go with the under on that. Next team is Toronto. So they have Toronto at they have them 85 wins. So I guess we'll just call it 84.5. What do you think about that? 84.5 for Toronto.
I mean, I would go. I'll let you go first on this one. I got to think about it.
I'm going to go over. I think Toronto's much better than they've been. I mean, you saw it last year. It was expanded playoffs, so they did make the playoffs. This year, they added George Springer. It looked like they were going to add Michael Brantley, but I guess that just fell apart, and he's back with the Astros. But they still added Springer. They have Bo Bichette, Vlad, Kevin Biggio, Lourdes Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez. They have Randall Grichuk. They have a crowded outfield, so they may trade someone for a pitcher. Maybe that's a little too late. Maybe it'll happen like the deadline or something like that. But I think their offense is one of the best offenses. If everyone can live up to their potential, at least close to that. And then pitching-wise, they have Ryu, who was really good last year. He's been really good in his career. He's just always been injured. But when he's pitched, I think his career ERA is like in the 2s. And he's been in the league for like 7-8 years now. I think they got, I think it was Chase Anderson. I think they got a couple pitchers, nothing like big, nothing amazing, but I think if their starting pitching can hold up just a little bit, and then their bullpen, they got what's his name, Kirby Yates. He was injured all last year. If he can come back and be somewhat what he was in 2019. Like a dominant closer. I think their pitching can hold up somewhat, but their offense is going to be the best part of their team. So I think, I'm going to go over 84.5.
Yeah, I'll go over too. I'll go over. I think it'll be around there. I think they'll be competing with the Rays, for second in the division. I don't think either of them will really compete with the Yankees for the division title. You have Vlad, Marcus Semien, Bo Bichette as well.
Semien, yeah.
Gurriel, obviously signing Springer. The offense should be very good, and if it's not, then you probably have a problem. If the offense isn't a top 10 offense in the league, then you're not getting the over probably. But we'll see. The pitching, it just has to be good enough. Obviously Ryu's been great. He's been injured a lot though, but other than him, you're kind of working with like a bunch of 3 and belows. But I think they'll probably get the over.
All right. Next team, the Red Sox. They're at 80 wins, so I guess we'll just call it 80.5. So, do you want me to start first?
I'm going with the under, regardless. So.
Yeah, I'm going with the under also.
There's no way they're getting 80 wins. There's no way.
And they also just traded Andrew Benintendi last night.
Yeah.
And they didn't really. they didn't really get anyone really in return for him. I think they got like 2 prospects, but they didn't get any MLB players.
Well, that was the thing is they've been trying to trade Benintendi for
a couple years now.
Yeah, for a long time, and they never really got a team to bite. I mean, Benintendi had a solid year, had solid playoffs before, but he's never, other than that one year, I think it was like 2017 or something, where he showcased some power. He really hasn't been anything special. I'm not really a fan. I don't know if you trade him for basically nothing, but yeah, I mean, I've never been a fan of Benintendi. They tried to trade Benintendi they've tried to trade Benintendi for so many, key players at like deadlines and stuff, and no team has ever viewed him as a key part of a trade. So, yeah, but I mean, as far as the Red Sox roster is concerned, I just don't think they have the people for it. So yeah, I mean, I would go under. I think they'll probably end up being. I think they could go like. I think they'll probably be like around 70 wins.
Yeah, I'm going under also. I mean, they just don't have any like impact players. I mean, they have JD Martinez, but he's not the same guy he was like in 2018. They have Verdugo, who I actually really like, but he's not good enough to like be kind of lead a team, be like that good of a hitter. They have Devers still. They have Bogarts. They're really good, but again, nothing like impactful can like change a team. I think Chris Sale's supposed to be coming back this year.
So they're saying like midsummer.
Yeah,
but coming off that, I can't put too much stock into it, especially the way he was pitching before the surgery. So
yeah,
it's Chris Sale was. I mean, at the time of the extension, I wasn't really a big fan. The extension clearly, at least so far, hasn't worked out. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how he does coming off the surgery, but I'm not going to expect too much, at least from this year, of him when he comes back.
Yeah, and then again, he's coming off Tommy John, and he's definitely not the same pitcher. He definitely won't be the same pitcher, and then they really have no one else behind him. I think they have like Nick Pivetta, Nathan Eovaldi.
They've got Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yeah, he's coming back. I mean, he had like that heart problem last year, but still, they have no bullpen. Their starting pitching is not great, and their offense has some players, but it's not good enough. It's not enough in order to win games with your pitching being that bad. So yeah, I think we both said under, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the low 70s, honestly. All right, so last team, I mean, Baltimore, 66.5. I mean,
I won't spend too much time on it. I mean, they'll be around there, but yeah, they're going to be pretty bad. So
yeah, all right. So we're gonna go to AL Central now. So
by the way, I mean we just recorded the AL Central. That was it, right?
And the AL West.
And the AL West, but our SD card doesn't have enough storage to record like a bunch of the time. So yeah, we're doing this for a second time, but
we'll still try to make it seem like it was the first time. All right, so again, the AL Central I thought was pretty surprising in the way they had the teams. They had Minnesota first at 90.5 wins. I'm going with under. I just don't see this team getting over 90.5 wins. I don't even think they're going to win the division. I have the White Sox winning the division, but I mean, they have a really good offense. I mean, they re-signed Nelson Cruz, Josh Donaldson. It's probably going to bounce back from the year he had last year. They got Andrelton Simmons, which can help defensively and then somewhat offensively. They did lose Eddie Rosario and didn't really replace him that much, but they have a really good offense anyways. So we'll have to see. I'm not really worried about the offense. I'm really worried about the pitching. They really didn't do anything pitching-wise to improve their team. And that's really been the thing that's been hurting them the last couple of years, that they really haven't had like a stud pitcher. So, yeah, I just think their pitching's going to let them down. So I'm going to go under 90.5 wins.
Yeah, I think it'll be around high 80s, but I'll go under as well. I mean, it's going to depend on the pitching. I don't think Maeda is going to be number one, or I don't think he's going to pitch like a number one, a true number one, that is. And other than that, they really don't, they don't have anybody else like Maeda. Yeah, I'll go 80, 88-ish, 87-ish, but yeah, I'll go with the under.
Next team, again, surprising. They have the Indians at 85.5 wins. I mean, I'm going under. I just don't. They lost again. They traded Lindor. They traded Carrasco. The pitchers that they've lost last couple years: Kluber, Bauer, Clevenger. I just don't see this team getting over 85 wins. Their best pitcher is Shane Bieber, and again, he was Cy Young last year. He was the best pitcher in baseball last year, just for last year. But he was playing the NL Central and AL Central, which again, like we said, had the worst offenses in baseball. So we'll have to see how he is over a 162 schedule, and if he can repeat that dominance that he had in 2020. But I doubt that it'll be that dominant. And then offensively, they really only have Jose Ramirez. They did sign Eddie Rosario, but he's not that impactful to replace Lindor or something like that. They lost Carlos Santana also, so I don't know. I don't see this team they were really bad offensively last year, and that was with Lindor and Santana. So with losing both of them, I don't think they're going to be good offensively. And then pitching wise, I think they'll be good, just not good enough in order to win games. So I'm going to go under 85.5.
Yeah, I'll go under as well. I think it'll be low 80s. You got Bieber, but you've lost so many people over the last 3 years. I think if you were able to keep a lot of those guys together, like a Lindor, like so many people, this team would be so much better. But it seems like the organization's just reluctant to pay people in general, even if you should pay them. All you've got is really Ramirez offensively, and that's it. Yeah, I'll go under. I still think this team's. I think they'll be good enough to win some games. I think they'll still be over 500, but it was 83.5.
85.5.
85.5. I think they'll be around 82, 81. So.
Yeah. And then next team, the Chicago White Sox, they have them 83.5. I'm going over. I think this team's probably the best team in the division. Their top three pitchers, which really all that matters, your 4 and 5 can kind of be interchangeable, but even that's not terrible. They're 4 and 5, but their top three pitchers are Lucas Giolito, Dallas Keuchel, and Lance Lynn, who they just acquired in the offseason. That's a pretty good top three. Again, you have to hope that Keuchel could pitch like he did last year, or at least somewhat to that. Maybe not as good as he was last year, but at least be in the 3s, low 4s. You need Lynn to kind of be that guy. He's very consistent over his career. He's going to give you those 30 starts, close to 200 innings, if not 200 innings. So if he can be in the mid 3s, again, maybe low 3s, that'd be really good. But you really need Giolito to be your ace. He's shown flashes, and he's definitely pitched like an ace somewhat, but he really needs to be that ace kind of guy this year. And then their offense, they have Grandal, they have the MVP from last year, Jose Abreu, they have Moncada, they have Anderson, they have Luis Robert in their center field, who was a really good rookie last year. He's probably going to be a pretty good MLB player over his career. So I just really like this team. And again, last year they probably should have won the division, but they collapsed at the end. So I think they'll be in the mid-90s for wins this season.
Yeah, so what was it, 83.5? Yeah, I'll go over on the White Sox. I think they'll probably be low 90s. Giolito, I think he's probably like a 2, but if he can play like a true ace, then this team, they could definitely win 95 games for sure. Offensively, you've got so many pieces. Obviously, Abreu, Grandal, Moncada, Anderson, Eaton, if you want us to count Eaton. I think they'll be low 90s. I think they're probably the best team in the division. They haven't won the division since 2008. Not that necessarily means anything, but yeah. I'll take them to win the division. I think they'll probably be like 92, 93 wins.
Yeah, so we both agree on the White Sox. And then we'll do the last two teams. It's the Royals and the Tigers. The Royals are 70.5, and the Tigers are 66.5. We don't have to spend much time on it, but I'm going to go over for the Royals and under for the Tigers. The Royals at least made some additions this offseason. Again, like we said earlier, they did trade for Andrew Benintendi, and they do have, Alberto Mondesi. They got Carlos Santana. They have Jorge Soler. They have Whit Merrifield. So they have some pieces offensively. Their pitching isn't great, but I think they can get over 70.5. And then the Tigers, they're a really bad team, so I'm just going to go under and hope that at least works out for me.
Yeah, I'll go under on both. I think they'll be. They're both going to be around, that 70 to 66 range.
Yeah.
I'll go under on both. To be honest, I'm not going to. I'll probably watch a total of 0 Tigers games the whole year. and I'll probably watch maybe like 3 Royals games, if that, and not even full games, just like whatever's on. Yeah, I mean, they're not good teams, so.
Yeah. All right, so AL West. So they have the Astros finishing in first, and they have them at 93.5 wins. I got to go under. I'm not sure about the Astros. I mean, last year they were under 500 when they made the playoffs last year. That's over 162. They may end up at 500, maybe even under 500, and that was with Springer. Obviously, they lost him in free agency this season. They will be getting Verlander back. He was out. I don't even know if he even made a start last year. Maybe he made one. But he'll be back. Will he still be the same pitcher he was like 2 years ago when he won the Cy Young? We'll have to see. I would say probably not, but maybe he is. Again, they also have Greinke. I think they're both like 38, 39 years old, so they're definitely not in their prime anymore, even though Verlander did win Cy Young 2 years ago. I just don't think they have the pitching. Their bullpen, definitely not. They have a really young bullpen like they did last year, and this year they didn't really make that many improvements. I think they got Pedro Baez from the Dodgers, but nothing really else. And offensively, like I said, they lost Springer. Altuve's on the decline. Correa, he hasn't really improved since 2017, and we know what happened in 2017. So they have Bregman, who's probably their best player, I'd say, but even last year he wasn't great either. They got Brantley back. I don't know. I just don't see them getting over 93.5 wins, but I still think they'll win the division.
Yeah, no, I still think I'm not. Yeah, I think I'll take the under. I think they'll probably be high 80s, low 90s, but yeah, it's gonna come down. I mean, their offense should be still pretty good. I mean, they've got so many still good players. Obviously, losing Springer hurts, but I mean, you still got obviously Altuve, Bregman, like you talked about, Brantley, Correa. It's going to come down to the pitching. I mean, we'll see how Verlander is. Greinke. I mean, if Greinke's their best starter, that's not going to be good. I mean, he's probably going to be a 3.7, 3.6, 3.8 type of guy, ERA. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. It's going to depend on the pitching to me. If Verlander can pitch like, a Cy Young candidate, like anything close to it, really, I mean, that'd be huge for the Astros. But if not, then definitely the under. But if Greinke and Verlander, I mean, if especially Verlander, if he manages to play well, then this team, I mean, they could get the over.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty tough for them, but I mean, I guess they could. Next team is the Angels, 86.5. I mean, I'm going under. I feel like I know you're going to go under too, but they just don't have any pitching. They haven't had pitching basically since Trout's been there, maybe in the beginning of his career when they had like Weaver and maybe like a late CJ Wilson, but they haven't had any pitching since like 2014, and they did nothing this offseason. They had Bauer, who was out there, who was from LA. It kind of seemed like the perfect fit. The Angels have money to spend, and Bauer wanted money. And they didn't. I think they were out on him like pretty early on. They didn't even like come down to the end. It was just between the Dodgers and the Mets, like we talked about. So I don't know. They just don't have pitching. Their best pitcher is Dylan Bundy, who was pretty good last year, but over the course of his career, he has not been good. So I don't really expect that to happen again this season with him being like a somewhat all-star type pitcher, what he was last season. Again, offensively, they have Trout, they have Anthony Rendon, they got Jose Iglesias this offseason, who's actually been pretty good these last couple of years. They have David Fletcher, who probably people don't really know about, but he's a pretty good contact hitter, and he's a really good defender. They still have Pujols for whatever it's worth, not really anything, but I don't know. I think their offense will be really good, but pitching-wise, and again, Ohtani, he's probably not even going to pitch this season. Maybe he does, but how effective is he even going to be? We don't even know about that, so I don't see this team getting over 86.5 wins.
I would be very surprised if this team were to get 86 wins. I'd take the under for sure. I think this is probably like a 78, 79 win team, and I don't even know if they'll hit that. I mean, they probably will, but I'm not even sure. The pitching is just not there at all. I mean, they failed to add key players at their most important needs. Yeah, I mean, it's Trout, Rendon, or their two best players probably, and then after that, it's the offense. The offense will be fine. It's going to come down to the pitching, but there's just not much to grab onto there. So,
yeah,
Not to mention, obviously, I just feel like they constantly underperform. Really, I mean, maybe they're just hyped too much every single year because you have Trout, obviously, who's probably the best player in the league over the past 10 years. He definitely is over the past 10 years. So, yeah, but I'll take the under.
Yeah. Next team, the Athletics. They're at 79.5. And I think this is probably just about right for them because they've lost some players, and they always seems like they do overperform. They're kind of like the Rays. They do always overperform. Like, you kind of have them for that maybe 81, 82 wins, and they'll somehow end up with like 89, 90 wins. But this year, I don't think they will. They really don't have any pitching. I mean, unless Luzardo is going to be like a number one, which he definitely has the possibility of being, I just don't see that pitching. They obviously lost Liam Hendricks, like we talked about. Well, I guess maybe we didn't say it for the White Sox, but he signed with the White Sox. He's arguably the best closer in baseball, and they lost him, and they didn't really replace him. So their bullpen isn't as good as it's been the last couple of years. Their starting pitching's not as good, and offensively, I mean, their best player is Matt Chapman. He's really good defensively, obviously, but even offensively, you think he'd be a better hitter. He's like a 260 hitter, but he definitely, he hits homers. He's definitely a really good player, but I'd like to see his average be up. I know that doesn't really matter as much anymore, but I feel like he's a better hitter than 260. They have Matt Olson, who he's kind of like a Gallo, which I guess we'll get into when we talk about the Rangers, but he's kind of home run or strike out, it seems like. They lost Semien, who he was a top 3 candidate just 2 years ago. I know last year he wasn't great, but
I mean, I wish we had a podcast because, like, back then, because, I mean, I called it on Semien, but...
That he'd be a MVP candidate?
No, like, that he'd be an MVP... Well, when he was an MVP candidate, that, he wouldn't be the next year, but...
Oh, well, yeah, I mean,
I feel like most people knew that, but, like, it would have been nice to get that right.
Yeah. But, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think this year... Like I said, they always overperform, but this year I just don't think they have the pieces to do it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Would you have the win total at 81.5 or something?
79.5.
I'll go the over just because they're the Athletics. It feels like they overperform almost every single year. I mean, if you probably went through the past 10 years and looked at their talent and then saw their win total, you'd probably say that they had overachieved the majority of the years. So I'll bet the over. And I mean, they're going to be around 79.5. They're not going to get to like an 89, 90 wins. I don't think they have the talent. But I definitely could see them getting over 79.5. Like, it would not surprise me if they're in like the 84, 85 range at all.
We'll do the next 2 teams together. It's the Mariners and the Rangers. Mariners had 69.5, Rangers 67.5. I mean, I'm gonna go under for both. I don't think either teams are that good. The Rangers have lost players, rather than gaining players, which they said they do. Obviously, they haven't. The Mariners, they've been trying to lose for the last 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I mean, both teams. I don't know. They'll be in the 60s, and they're not going to be able to compete for anything. So I'm going to go under.
I'll go under on both as well. I don't have much else to say about them, honestly.
Yeah, I mean they're nothing teams. I mean they're not gonna be competing for a couple years down the line, anyways. So yeah. I guess one more thing was that Elvis Andrus got traded to the Athletics, so he kind of replaced Semien. But again, he's not that type of player that he was anymore. Like there was last 3, 4, 5 years. He's not that player anymore. So that's not going to make that much of an impact on the Athletics. And for the Rangers, they got Chris Davis, who
he's been injured, but
yeah, he's been injured. But he's going to give you the 240 for 40 homers if he's healthy over a regular season. But again, that's not anything that's going to impact your team that much. So. All right, now we're going to move on to the NL East. I think this is where they're wrong on their projections and everything. They have the Mets at 95.5 wins. I mean, do you want to start? Or do you want me to start?
I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going under. I mean, I don't even think they'll win the division, let alone get to 95 wins. I mean, look, they added Lindor, they got Carrasco. I mean, they technically brought Stroman back on it was the 1-year contract, the qualifying offer. They got James McCann at catcher. I think he's good. He's nothing great, but I think he's good. He's definitely like a top 10 catcher, but he's more towards the bottom of the 10. I think it really depends on. I think Lindor will be great. I don't really have a problem with him, but I think it depends on what Alonso and Conforto can do. Is Conforto going to be the guy like he was last year? That he's kind of shown that it could be a 280 hitter who could hit 30 homers. If he could be that kind of guy, then their offense will be a lot better. And if Alonso can be, I don't really know if he's ever gonna hit 50 homers again. But could he be a guy who hits 35, 40 possibly, and just not hit 220? If he could be a guy who hits 250, 260, and hit 35, 40 homers, I think that's really what he should be. Now, if he could do it, we'll have to see. But if he can do it, then having him, Lindor, Conforto, Dom Smith, who was really good last year, and if they had a DH in the NL, that would have been huge because he could have just been DH. But he's probably going to play left field, I'd assume. Maybe even first base. Yeah, I know Alonso's there, but we'll have to see what happens. But I don't know. I think they'll be good. I just don't see them being 95 wins good.
I agree. They'll compete for the division for sure. They'll be high. They'll be at least 85 wins, 100%.
Yeah.
Are they going to win the division? Probably not. I don't think so. But yeah, I'll have them. I'll go under as well. But I think they'll be around 90. So.
Yeah. I'd probably go mid 80s, but yeah, definitely not 95. All right, next team they have Washington, the Nationals at 85. We'll say 85 and a half wins. I know that. I mean, this is your favorite team.
They have the Braves under 85 and a half.
Yes, they have the Braves under 85 and a half.
Nationals, I want to say over, but I won't.
So you go under?
Yeah, I'll go under. I'm not even going to say their World Series was necessarily a fluke because, I don't know, but I don't see them getting above 85 and a half. Obviously, the pitching is still stellar. Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, Lester. That's if they all can play as well. If they can all play close to their primes. Obviously that pitching is going to be insane. The bullpen. It's the Nationals bullpen. Obviously, you have Brad Hand, which is nice. You got Brad Hand, but it's the Nationals bullpen. I don't expect much of it. If it can be like, if it can play well, then that's obviously, it's the bullpen, so that's huge. Offensively, you've got Soto, you've got Turner, but other than that, it's a lot of pretty much average or below average. I think they can definitely get above 85 and a half. I'm tempted to go over only because I'm biased, and that's what I hope. But I'll go under. I just think the NL East is just so competitive, and I'm not sure that they're better than the Mets. I don't think they're better than the Braves. I'm not sure that they're even better than the Phillies. So I'll go under. I just think it's a very competitive division.
I'm going to go over. I think it'll probably be 87 wins or maybe 88, but I really like the Nationals. I think it depends on their pitching, though. If Scherzer can have one more really dominant year, I think we can kind of see that he's starting to decline. He's not the top pitcher in the league anymore. He's definitely still top 10, but he's not the top guy. If him, Strasburg, and Corbin, and even Lester, I thought that was actually a pretty good pickup to get Lester.
You got him for basically not nothing, but
for an experienced pitcher who's solid, that I think that was pretty good.
He just has to be your fourth best starter.
Yeah.
And then it's worth it. So.
And that's if you're gonna roll out with that four, is Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, and Lester. That's a pretty good top four. So as long as they're all what they should be, or even if Scherzer's a little bit less, as long as they're close to what they should be, they're gonna be pretty good starting pitching wise, and that's kind of what I'm banking on. And then getting Brad Hand, obviously it's a really good addition. They still have, their bullpen still isn't great. Besides that, they have Will Harris and Daniel Hudson, who have been decent over the last couple of years, but as long as Brad Hand, I mean, I'd assume he'd be the closer. That's the reason he went to the Nationals, because he wanted to be the closer on the team. As long as he could be what he was last year, then I think their bullpen will be good enough. Unlike 2 years ago, even though they won the World Series, the first half of that season their bullpen was terrible.
I mean, you didn't like luck into a good bullpen that year, but I mean, it was kind of lucky. I mean,
yeah, and then offensively, they traded for Josh Bell. I don't think he's the guy he was in the first half of 2019, but I think he's a solid first baseman. Obviously, they have Trey Turner. They have Juan Soto. Obviously, we'll probably get into this later, but for award predictions. But he's probably my MVP for this upcoming season. But that's just me.
Over like an Acuna.
Yeah, over Acuna, Betts, Bellinger. Any of those guys, Lindor. I would have Soto as my MVP. I think if he would have played enough games last year, he would have won MVP. So I know it was only 60 games, but still. And they added Kyle Schwarber, who, he wasn't great last year, but 2 years ago he had 30 homers. So I don't know. I just think their team is probably the second best team in this division, behind the Braves. I think the Braves are definitely the best team in this division. But as long as their pitching can hold up, I think they could be pretty competitive.
I want to go over. I'll go over. Just
they're switching over.
I'll switch over, just because I feel like if I bet the under, or like if I predict the under, then they're going to be under. So I don't want that to happen. So I'll go over. Although I don't think it'll be. They had them at 85.5. I think they'll be around 85.5. I don't think they're not going to be a 95 win team or anything like that.
Yeah. All right, next team, Philadelphia. Again, still not the Braves. I think that's what's crazy about this. They have Philadelphia. They've been 83, but we'll just call it 83.5. So 83.5 for Philadelphia.
I'll go under. I just can't. I can't go over on I don't want to go over on too many teams in the NL East. The division is so competitive. It's so tough. This Phillies roster, if it was in a different division and they had them at 83.5, I'd probably be going over on them. But I'll go under. Obviously, you keep your Muto, which is big. I'm not too worried about the offense. Obviously, the GOAT Harper, but I'll go under on the Phillies. They can play well and they can still go under 83.5 wins just because the division is so good. And we haven't even talked about the Braves yet, and I think the Braves are probably my division winner. So,
yeah, I'm going under also. They're a team unlike the Angels. I like the Angels. They seem to always underperform no matter what their team looks like. They still have Harper, Real Muto. They have Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. I think they re-signed Didi back. I don't know. Their team. It always seems like they definitely improve their team. But I think this division is definitely the toughest division in baseball, and they always seem to underperform. So I just can't go with the over with them. I still think they'll be like 81, 82 wins, but I just don't see them getting over 83.5.
Yeah, they're over under I feel like consistently for the past years, especially since the Harper signing, has always been around that 83, 84 range, and they've always, for the most part, they're typically the under on that, and they typically underperform considering the talent they have. We'll see what happens, but yeah.
And then the fourth team, again, the most surprising team, they have the Braves at 82.5 wins. I don't know how they came up with this. They were one game away from the World Series last year. Probably should have been in the World Series if they didn't choke 3-1. They have the reigning MVP Freddie Freeman. They have Ronald Acuna. They got Marcell Ozuna back. They have Dansby Swanson, Ozzie Albies. They signed Charlie Morton in the offseason. Soroka's coming back. Their young pitchers, Ian Anderson, he was great last year. Their bullpen's still intact. I don't know. I just don't see how they came up with this number of them being at 82.5. I feel like they're going to be in the mid-90s, maybe low 90s, but at least in the 90s for me. So.
Yeah, I would probably predict this team as my division winner. I just think talent-wise, they're probably the most talented. They're also they've been the most consistent throughout the years. At least the past couple of years. like I could honestly, I could see a team like the Phillies getting like 77 wins, and that's not going to happen to the Braves. The Braves, there's no way they would fall below 80 wins or anything like that. At least in my mind, I don't see it. This team is just so good. Obviously, Acuna, Albies, who are on like two of just the best contracts you will ever find in any sport. It's insane, and you understand why they signed them. But at the same time, it's just like if you're the Braves, that is just incredible. Obviously, you bring Ozuna back. I think this team should be at least a 90-win team to me. I'd probably have them as my division winner. I would be a little bit surprised if they didn't win the division. I think the Nationals could probably make a push. The Mets could obviously make a push as well. And really any of these teams could win the division. Obviously, I don't think the Marlins are going to win the division, but even the Marlins made the playoffs last year, and given it was a 60-game season, I think did they even play 60 games? But given it was a short season, but even the Marlins, I'm curious what the Marlins have, what they have for the Marlins.
Yeah, they have the Marlins at 68.5. I think that's way too low. I'm going over on that.
Yeah, I would go over as well.
It's not like they'll win 80 games. I think they'll be 75. I still think,
if the Marlins are in...
They're a somewhat talented team. They're not terrible.
If the Marlins were in, the AL Central,
They're probably competing for that division.
Yeah.
So...
Or, whatever division, whatever the worst division in MLB is, anything, potentially anything but the NL East, they'd be competing at least more so than what they are now. The Marlins team is not bad. I would go over as well. I think they'll be a 75-ish win team. So...
Yeah. I agree. I'd say the worst division in baseball is probably the next division we're going to look at. That's the NL Central. There's no clear-cut team in this division. They have Milwaukee at 88.5 winning the division. I'm going under. I do not like Milwaukee at all. They have no pitching. Even their offense. I know they have Yelich. He was terrible last year, but I don't expect him to be that bad. But even still, besides him, they have Keston Hiura, who was really good 2 years ago, 2019, I should say. He wasn't great last year. I think he's probably moving over to first base, I think he is, because they just got Colton Wong to be their second baseman, who I really like Colton Wong, but again, he's not going to add much offensively. It's more defensively. But again, other than Yelich, they still have Lorenzo Cain, but he's definitely on the decline. He's been on the decline. He's not the same guy he was with the Royals. And, in their bullpen, they still have a really good bullpen. I'm not questioning that with Hader and then Devin Williams, who was Rookie of the Year last year. But starting pitching-wise, their best pitcher is Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, who haven't shown much. And, they've had limited time to show what they've done. I don't know. I don't see how this team's... I don't know how they have them at 88.5. I just don't see them... I don't even really see them getting... They may not even get to 82 wins. I just don't think they're that good.
So 88.5?
88.5, yeah.
I'll go under. I don't think this team is. I don't think this team's an 88.5 win team. I don't think. There's no way Yelich can be as bad as he was last year, hitting 205. 12 homers in a 60-game season. Is he going to be MVP Yelich? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're going to get from Yelich. He better at least be a better version of the Marlins Yelich. I'd hope. I'm not exactly sure what you're going to get, but for them to get to 88 wins, he'd have to return to MVP form Yelich. I think there's a chance he can. I don't know if he's going to be fully that, but I don't know that other than Yelich though, offensively, do they really have anything? Not really. Obviously, like you said, Hader and Williams. Their starting pitching is, Woodruff is solid, obviously. I don't know. I would say they're probably like an 85, 84 win team. I still think this team can definitely compete for the division, though. Just given the strength of the division. If the Brewers were in the NL East, they'd probably be. If you swap the Marlins and the Brewers, they'd be the worst team in the NL East, probably.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely.
So.
All right. Next team, the Chicago Cubs. They have at second. Again, I don't really agree with that. They have them at 85.5 wins. The Cubs. They're clearly trying to dump salary and not really trying to compete for the season. I think it's pretty obvious. They traded Yu Darvish for basically nothing. They lost Lester. Obviously, I mean, their top pitcher's Kyle Hendricks. He's a good pitcher, but he's not a number one. Their closer is still Craig Kimbrell, so you most likely don't have a good bullpen, which they don't. And then, I mean, offensively, you look at the names offensively that they have, you'd think they'd probably be like one of the top offenses in baseball, but they're really not. I mean, at every single position, you probably know who this guy is. I mean, Wilson Contreras is their catcher, Anthony Rizzo, first base. David Bodie, you may not know, but he's second base. But then Chris Bryant, third. Javier Baez, shortstop. Jock Peterson, left. Ian Happ, center field, and Jason Hayward, right field. I mean, those are all those guys. I know Happ's younger, but all those guys, and Bodie, I guess, but all those guys are solid MVP type level players, or at least have been at some points in their career. And I don't trust this team at all. Even if their pitching was still like decent, like it was last year. I know they made the playoffs last year, but they were not a good team last year. Then to lose Darvish and Lester and not improve anywhere starting pitching wise or in their bullpen, I just don't see this team being able to get to 85.5 wins.
85.5, yeah, I would agree for the most part. I'll take the under. But again, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen in this division. Would it surprise me that much if the Cubs won the division? It surprised me a little bit, but I'm just not too sure what to expect. I mean, offensively, again, like, if you can get, like you said, I mean, if Contreras, Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, Peterson, and Hayward, if they can all play, close to, the best they've ever played, and I don't think that's probably not going to happen, but if you can get a few of those guys to play, like, out of their minds, which is possible, I mean, this team could get to 85, I think, at least. Especially in this division. I'll take the under, but I think I don't feel too great about that pick, but I wouldn't want to pick the over, to be honest, either. So I'll go under, but I don't think it'll be by that much.
All right, and then third team, they have the Cardinals at 80.5. I'm going over. They're probably my pick to win the division, honestly. I mean, obviously they traded for Nolan Arenado, which is huge. And then even in just re-signings, they re-signed Yadier Molina, they re-signed Adam Wainwright. They did lose Colton Wong, which I think hurts because like I said, I really do like him. But they can replace him on their team. And just looking at their team, and they have Molina, Paul Goldschmidt still at first base, who's still solid. Tommy Edman at second base, who's a pretty good player, honestly, if you really look at him. Nolan at third, Paul DeYoung at short. He's really not that bad at shortstop. His problem is health, but if he can stay healthy, he's pretty good. And then they have Tyler O'Neill in left. He's young, but he's kind of like a power speed. Yeah, they also have Harrison Bader in center. I mean, he's kind of like a defensive specialist kind of guy. Then they have Dylan Carlson in right, who's been a top prospect in baseball, switch hitter. So we'll have to see what happens with him. I mean, like looking at their lineup, like that's not that bad of a lineup, especially with getting Arenado in there. And then you have Flaherty as your number one. Like, I'm not too confident with him being number one. I think he's more of a two. He's been very inconsistent so far in his career, but he definitely has the potential to be a number one. I guess this season we'll probably see if he really will be a number one. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely my favorites in the division. I see it's crazy that they had him at 80.5. I don't know. I just feel like that's way too low for the Cardinals.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Cardinals are my favorite to win the division as well. I mean, there's a chance they don't. Like, the Brewers could definitely win the division. Yeah, I would have them over 80.5. Flaherty, we'll see if he's number one. Probably the number two. That might be in their downfall in the playoffs, just pitching. I mean, it could just be the roster in general. Like, I mean, they're not going to, like, across the board, they're probably not good enough. But if Arenado can play like an MVP candidate, this team can do very well in the regular season. Do they have the power and, the pitching to win like an NLCS? No, but can they make the playoffs and compete and, be a solid team? 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll just do the last two teams together. So it's the Reds and the Pirates. The Reds are at 79.5 and the Pirates are at 61.5. For Pirates, I mean, 61.5, you almost just have to go over. Like, it's you can't go under. I mean, for a team to not win 60 games, like I wouldn't be able to believe it by picking it. So I would just have to go over for them, even though I think they're a terrible team. And then for the Reds, I'm going to go under, even though I think they've definitely lost pieces like Bauer this offseason. They traded Raisel Iglesias to the Angels, their closer. I think they still have some good talent on their team, but I think when it comes to the deadline, they're probably going to flip Castillo or even Gray, maybe even both of them. I'm not exactly sure, but they'll probably do something to sell, most likely. So I feel like they may be on pace to get over 79.5, but I think when the trade deadline comes, they'll trade some players, and then they'll probably end up with, like, I don't know, 75 wins, 74 wins, something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to go over. If they don't trade any of their pieces like a Sonny Gray or a Castillo, I think they can easily get over 79 wins. Are they going to win the division? Probably not. I don't think they will, but obviously, like, losing a Bauer's, it's just hard to come back from. But if they keep Gray, if they keep Castillo, if they don't trade any pieces, which they may, I mean, we'll see, but I still think they can easily get over 79 wins, so I'll go over on that.
And then for the Pirates, you going over under?
I'll go over. I mean, I don't really care, honestly.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on the Pirates. I mean, I'm still, like, right on the Pirates and the fact that they're just bad. I mean, everybody knows it, so.
Yeah. All right, so that's it for NL Central. So for our last division, NL West, so they have the Dodgers at 102.5. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I want to go over. They're just so good. I mean, I don't even feel like I have to go through their players. I mean, I actually don't even have their depth chart. I'll pull it up just so I can just, like, list it off. But I mean, obviously their rotation. I mean, Kershaw, Buehler. You're gonna have Price. I mean, I don't have any doubts about their rotation. Obviously Bauer as well. Bullpen. I mean, I don't really have too many doubts. I mean, you got, like, Jansen, Treinen. I mean, obviously their offense, I mean, it's just not even – it's just insane. I mean, is there any spot where they don't have, like, an above-average at least player? honestly,
looking at their team, it's amazing how good their team is. And they may even bring back Justin Turner. He's still a free agent, so – whether it seems like he's either going to go to the Dodgers, the Brewers, or the Mets. So if he goes back to the Dodgers, then if you look at their team right now, how it is, you have Will Smith, Max Muncy, Gavin Lux, I'd assume would start at second base. Then you'd have Turner at third, Seager at short, Pollock in left with Chris Taylor. Then you have Bellinger in center and Mookie in right. I mean, that's like what, 5 All-Stars on your team right there, something like that.
Their worst person, like, might be like AJ Pollock, which is, like, craziest.
Yeah, and he had actually a pretty good year last year. So, yeah, I mean,
he can, like, he's been, like, an All-Star before, or at least All-Star caliber. I don't know if he's actually. I think he's been an All-Star before.
He was in 2014. He was an All-Star. Yeah.
As long as he doesn't get hurt, I mean, he'll be good. So.
Yeah, and even their bullpen. I mean, they got Tommy Kahnle. I'm pretty sure he'll be out the entire year, and maybe he comes back somewhere in the middle, maybe towards the end. I mean, I know he had Tommy John last year, so I'd assume he's out for this whole year. But maybe he comes back at the end. They got Corey Knebel, he was like a top closer maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago with the Brewers. That's kind of like the Treinen pickup they had last year, where you had a guy who was one of the best closers in baseball, and then got injured. Then you pick him up on, like, a 1-year deal or trade for him in this case. But they still have Treinen. They still have Kenley. I mean, he's not the guy he was in, like, 2015, 2016. He probably won't even be the closer when the season ends, but he's still a good enough reliever to have. I honestly think Urias should be their closer. I mean, didn't he showed that in the playoffs last year? I wouldn't even really have him as a starter. You have enough starters. I'd put him in the bullpen, but I guess, I mean, they have so much depth that both in the bullpen and starting pitching, it doesn't really matter. But I'd like to see him be the closer, honestly, or even Treinen. I think Treinen could be the closer too.
We'll see. I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens exactly, but
it doesn't matter. So
they're so loaded. I'll take the over. I mean, it's tough to take the over on the 102 wins. Like,
yeah,
you're really betting for, like, a record type of team, record-setting type of team. I think it happens. I think they're going to have an insane regular season. It's just they can get a couple injuries and they could still get 102 wins.
Yeah,
their team is so loaded. Now, I mean,
I'm going over also, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to go over, and I'm actually, I mean, this is a bit of a spoiler, but I don't think I would pick them as my World Series champion, to be honest. If we're being honest, it's not that I invalidate their World Series championship last season, but I don't know that I count it. I don't know that I view it the same as if it was a full season. Like, of course, the Dodgers win the World Series in the shortened season. That's only 60 games.
Yeah.
And it takes the Braves choking a 3-1 lead. Like, this Dodgers franchise is just, they always find ways to like lose games in the postseason, and I don't want to bet on the Dodgers. They're my least favorite team in the league, and it's probably not even close. I don't like Kershaw. I hate Kershaw.
I don't really have that hate for the Dodgers, but I mean, I don't like them, but I mean, I don't have that hate for them though.
Yeah, but anyways, that seems insane.
Yeah, no, it's an insane team. All right, next, they have the Padres at 95.5. Man, 95.5. I mean, I'm gonna go over, but I think they win. I think it's less than 100. I think they probably win like 97, 98 games. And I feel like people are definitely high on the Padres. I mean, of course, they acquired Yu Darvish and Blake Snell this offseason. They also, I think they traded for Joe Musgrove also. So that's 3 starters. I mean, 2 of them in Darvish and Snell, who could be ones in any rotation. Then Musgrove, who's like a pretty solid 3-4 starter in rotations. You still have Chris Paddock, who had a down year last year, but with the extra help in the rotation and offensively, he'll probably be better, you'd assume. Then you have Dinelson Lamet, who was a Cy Young candidate. I think he finished like 4th or 5th last year. So it's a loaded starting rotation. And then, I mean, you're not going to have Clevenger for this year, but for next year you're going to. So their rotation's insane. Their bullpen, they definitely need to get an addition probably at the trade deadline. Right now, their 2 best relievers are Pomerantz and Pagan. You know, they're really good, but the rest of that bullpen's a little iffy. They definitely need someone in there. So that won't be a problem at the deadline, though. And then if you look at their lineup, I mean, you have Tatis, he's probably a top 10 player in baseball, maybe top 15. I mean, for counting pitchers or something like that, but he's probably a top 10 player in baseball. You have Machado, who's an MVP candidate last year. You still have Tommy Pham, who didn't have a great year last year. Trent Grisham was really good last year, so you're hoping he can continue with that. And then you had Will Myers, who he was almost going to get waived, honestly, like before last year. And then I think he had like 280, I think it was last year, with like 15 homers or something like that. So he was really good last year. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they honestly missed the playoffs. I feel like that could happen, but I think they're too talented, especially with that starting rotation. I think they'll be fine. Like I said, I'm going to go over 95.5.
Yeah, I'm conflicted because I do think they're going to end up around 95. And if I bet the over, like, I don't think they're going to be a 100-win team at all.
No.
Like, if I bet the over, I have like a slim, margin to work with. Like, I'm working on like a couple win gap. Or if I bet the under, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this team won like 89, 90 games. So
yeah, same.
I'll bet the under. I think if I had to bet on their exact win count, I'd probably go like 97. But I think I don't know, like I feel like I should just go the under, and I think there's a better chance they end up between 95 and 89 than they do between 97 or 96 or 98 or above that. I don't think they're going to be a 100-win team. But yeah, I mean, this team is another just. I mean, they've built for this. I mean, Yu Darvish, Snell, obviously, Musgrove, like you talked about, Paddock, who had a down year. Their bullpen is fine for now. I mean, yeah, you might make a trade. We'll see what happens there. I mean, but their lineup is insane. I mean, you've had. Obviously, Tatis, Machado, Pham, Grisham, Myers, and
even
Hosmer, who, he's been here for a while now. I mean, he was like a bad contract at the time, but actually,
it's been here for like 4 years.
Yeah,
or this will be his 4th year.
Yeah, I think it's a very solid team. I think they're one of the best teams in the NL. Clearly, I mean, they're not even the best team in their division. It's not even close. I don't even think they're close to the Dodgers still. But
no.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Padres they're always a risky bet because they're the Padres, and I don't know how much trust I can have in them, which is tough for me to go. That's why it's tough for me to go in the over. I'll take the under, but yeah, they're on paper they're an insane team.
Yeah, the third team in the division, they have the Diamondbacks at 79.5 wins. Oh, honestly, we'll do the next 2 together. So it's Diamondbacks at 79.5, and then the Giants at 75.5. I mean, for the Diamondbacks, I'm gonna go 70. I'm gonna go under. Honestly, I don't think they'll be terrible, but I think they'll probably be 75, 76 wins. I mean, their starting rotation's not terrible. I mean, you still have Mad Bum as your number one. I mean, he's clearly not a number one anymore, but he could still be a consistent pitcher if healthy. In the mid threes most likely. But then the two guys that are really interesting are Zach Gallen and Luke Weaver. They're both of them are young and they're both pretty good. They have a lot of upside. I actually kind of like Gallen more than Weaver. Weaver's kind of been injured these last two seasons, while Gallen, he was really good last year. He was probably their best player last year, honestly. And if they can continue doing that, then you probably have two guys who may never be like number ones, but they could be twos in a pretty good rotation. So if you have two guys like that, and then you still have Mad Bum who would be consistent enough. Then they have a couple other young guys like Merrill Kelly and then Caleb Smith, who they got from the Marlins. So their rotation is not terrible, but it's their bullpen and their offense. I just don't know where they're getting any offense from. Their best players, Ketel Marte, who 2 years ago was really good, but last year he wasn't so good. They really don't have any protection in there. You have Eduardo Escobar, who he was, again, 2 years ago, he was really good. He had like 40 homers, drove in like 120 RBIs, but last year wasn't great. He's getting older. And they really didn't make that many additions to their offense. So I just don't know where the protection is going to be for Ketel Marte in this lineup. And they kind of have some aging pieces on this team that if they don't live up to their potential, then and their potential is not that high, then I'm not sure where their offense is going to go. So I'm going to go under for the Diamondbacks.
I'll go under too. I think they're going to be around 79. They may hit like 80. They may be 75, around there. If Gallen and Weaver play like, if they're consistent, then you'll have at least three solid pitchers. I'm assuming Madison Bumgarner, he'll be at least a 3. He'll play consistently. Yeah, I mean their offense just isn't good. Obviously, like you talked about Marte, Escobar. I mean, you've got like Peralta. It's just pieces that look like they're just either on the decline or just haven't played very well recently. I'll take the under. This team's pretty boring to me. Like, they may end up with 80 wins regardless. Their ceiling is a really like 83, 84. So
yeah. And then for the Giants, I mean, it was 75.5. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as with them as the Diamondbacks, but they have older pieces than the Diamondbacks do. I mean, you have guys like Brandon Crawford who's been there for almost 10 years. Brandon Belt's almost been there for 10 years. You have Evan Longoria, who's definitely not the same player he was in Tampa Bay. They did sign Tommy La Stella, who was pretty good 2 years ago before he got injured. I think he broke his leg or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of the same situation where their starting pitching isn't as good as the Diamondbacks is, or at least the Diamondbacks can be. But I just don't know where the offense is going to come from. And their bullpen is, I mean, you may know like two names in their bullpen. There's really no one of note. So, and their best pitcher is Johnny Cueto. I mean, this isn't 2014, 2015. So,
yeah, I'll take the under as well. Whatever. Yeah, I agree with what you said.
I mean, they were actually pretty good last year, but over 162, they probably wouldn't have kept that pace up. But yeah, and then what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I mean, Johnny Cueto just isn't gonna be your one. Even if Johnny Cueto, is good. I mean, it's just they're not gonna get above 80 wins, and I'll bet.
Yeah. And also, Kevin Gausman's making $18 million this season, so. That's just, I mean, I just thought that was interesting because, it's Kevin Gausman. But
yeah.
The last team is the Rockies. They're at 60.5 wins. So they're lower than the Pirates are. They're the lowest team in the league, 60.5. I mean, I guess I'll go.
I mean, I'll take the over, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to bet on under 60.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same,
but
I'm thinking the same thing. It is the same thing as like the Pirates. Like, I can't go under for if you have 60.5 wins, and their team is terrible. I mean, they're like, if their pitchers weren't in Colorado, they wouldn't actually be as bad, but they're in Colorado, so of course they're going to be. They have no bullpen at all, and their best player is Trevor Story, who's probably a top 3 shortstop, but
it's probably going to get traded. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, his contract's up at the end of the year. If I'm him, I I'm leaving probably no matter what. I just wouldn't want to stay there. You're going to be bad for the next 5, 6, 7 years. You're probably always going to be bad because you're never going to have enough good pitching in order to win. But yeah, I mean, I'm rather getting traded at the deadline or I'm just leaving, in free agency. But yeah, I mean, they still have like Charlie Blackmon, but I mean, he's old. Yeah, he's like 36, I want to say 35, and he's not the same player he was even just like 3 years ago. So yeah, it's not a good team at all. And I'm gonna go over just because like I feel like you have to, but it's between them and the Pirates for who's the worst team in the league, and it probably is the Rockies just because where they play.
Potentially, yeah. Well, that's it, right? Do we want to go into the? You want to talk about the All-Star voting, or?
Yeah, we can talk about the All-Star voting. So the second, I guess like
the second fan voting returns.
Yeah,
now. Yeah. LeBron now leads everybody. He has gotten the most All-Star votes. I guess right now the Western starters would be LeBron, Jokic, Leonard in the front court, and Curry and Doncic in the back court. This is just the fan voting, of course, but
yeah,
the fans. I think that's about right. You could definitely argue Dame over Doncic, at least in my mind, but. I mean, I think the fans have gotten that right as far as the West starters and the East starters. You've got Durant, Giannis, and Embiid, and then Beal and Irving. I think that's also definitely fair. I think, and I'll get into it, but I think that's definitely fair. I mean, like Brown's only gotten 1 million votes compared to Irving, who's gotten 2.1. I think Brown should probably see more votes. Who else has not gotten a lot of votes? I mean, I don't think Tatum's gotten a lot of votes. I mean, that's probably pretty biased, but I mean, even people like Sexton. Like Sexton's Rose is only what, like 20,000 votes less than Sexton, and Sexton has had a much better year than Derrick Rose. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean that's the stupid thing with like the fan vote is that some of them are just dumb. Yeah. But I mean, I feel like again, it's only the fan vote, but like Bam, he's sixth right now in front court for Eastern Conference. I mean, I'm not saying he should be a starter, but he should definitely have more. Like Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy shouldn't even be in the top 10. He might not. You could argue he shouldn't even be in the top 10. I mean, he hasn't played many games.
He's not having
that good.
Yeah, he hasn't been good, and he hasn't played that many games either. So
yeah,
Bam's been their best player all year. So I mean, I'm sure when like the coach, it's 50% fan vote and then 50% coach and player vote. I mean, I'm sure when the coach and players vote, Bam will be an all-star, but Jimmy definitely should not be an all-star. I mean, even I know it's fan vote, so that's why Anthony Davis has 2.3 million, but like Paul George should be ahead of him. Even Zion, you could say Zion, like, if you look at his year, he's having an amazing year, just that they just can't win because their team is terrible, but Anthony Davis is not having that good of a year. I think he's like barely averaging 20 points a game.
Yeah, I think he has like the worst he says one of the worst stat lines since his rookie year.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, AD is still going to be an all-star. I still think he should be an all-star, but yeah, like he should not be 1.3 mil votes ahead of George or 1.5 ahead of Zion. I mean, I think the worst, if you just look at this, the worst name on here is, I mean, it's clearly like Klay Thompson. I mean,
yeah,
Klay Thompson, obviously
Caruso
is a meme as well. I mean, so I was talking about this to Brandon on the way back from the podcast studio. It was like, is Klay Thompson being on here? Is that a meme, or is that like, are the majority of those people just like voting Klay Thompson because they actually think he's playing?
I mean, to me, I think it's clearly a meme, but I mean,
probably
I don't think people actually think he's playing, but
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought that, I feel like at least some of those people voted Thompson just because they assumed he was playing and they assumed he would be an all-star. But
I mean, maybe some of them were. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, about that. But I mean, every single one of those votes, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But, I think if you're looking, again, if it was based off just fan vote for starters, I think it'd be right. I think those would be the starters. I don't have a problem with Luka being in over Lillard, even Mitchell. I don't have a problem with Kawhi being over anyone. I would say LeBron, Jokic, Durant, Giannis, Embiid, Beal, Irving, and I would probably say those guys are like guaranteed. And then you can maybe have an argument for like Kawhi or Curry, possibly. Like some people may say Lillard over Curry. I wouldn't say that because I just think Curry, he's the driving force of that team. Like even though Lillard is with the Blazers too, the Blazers are a better team than the Warriors are. So. And Steph, I mean, he's averaging like 29 points a game. So, I mean, I think he is the starter.
I mean, for the two starting guards, like for me, Curry's a lock. Like if you want to put Dame as a starter, then you're taking John Doncic out. At least in my mind, I would have.
And you really can't even take him out. So
no, I mean,
say?
well, I was saying that if to me Curry is a lock at a starting guard, and if you want Lillard to start, you should take out Doncic and not Curry.
And I was saying. I was saying you can't I was saying you can't even like take Luka out because I'm pretty sure he's averaging like 29, 9, and 9. So like I know people may want Lillard in, but like you can't take out a guy who's basically averaging a triple double. Even though I know
the only reason you would argue Doncic shouldn't be a starter is purely just based on 3-point percentage. What it is. It's like
31, 30%. That's kind of. But then you could look at Giannis.
28.
You could look at Giannis though and say the same.
Oh, no, that might have been last. That might have just been what? Okay, it's 31%. Yeah. I mean, it's better than it was earlier in the year, but yeah, no, I would still. I mean, yeah, I think the fan votes on the starters have gotten it right, but to be fair, it's kind of hard to mess up the starters. That's not where the snubs come from. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I mean, like, so if there's 12 and what 7 from the West would be in, to me, it's. I mean, we talked about this earlier, but yeah, I mean, George should be an all-star. Zion's going to get in there. I mean, I would hate to see Wiggins should not be an all-star.
No, he won't be. It'll be George, Zion, AD, obviously.
Christian Wood might get in.
He could get in for one of those last spots. But I would say it's those 5 starters, then AD, George, Zion, guaranteed. Lillard, Mitchell, guaranteed. So that's 5. So then you have 2 spots left. Does that go to Gobert? Does that go Booker? Does that go Chris Paul? Christian Wood? I mean, who is that going to?
I mean, it doesn't look like it's going to be Gobert.
Well, based on the fan vote.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get in.
I mean, when we did ours, did you? I didn't pick him. Did you pick him?
I think I had him in, but I don't think he's going to get in.
Yeah, I didn't have him. I forget who I exactly had at the end, but I know I didn't have him. I know I had Booker in there. So I had McCollum if the games would have worked out, but I don't think it's going to.
So we established those 10. The ones that you'd have in those 11 and 12, I'd either be Morant, Booker, Chris Paul, Christian Wood, Ingram. And that's probably you have to choose 2 of those guys. There's a very solid chance it'd be the 10 we said, and then Ja and Devin. We'll see though. I mean, I think Christian Wood probably should get in there, but I don't know if he actually will. I think I don't know. I mean, would you rather have Christian Wood or Ja in there? I mean, I guess Ja for entertainment and stuff. You could definitely make it a case that Wood has had the better year, though.
Yeah. I will have to see. It's going to be based off the coaches and players. So I don't know. I mean, the NBA would probably rather have Ja in there than Christian Wood because you're right, the entertainment value. But I guess we'll just have to see what the players and coaches think.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum should both definitely be all-stars. If they're not, that'd be unfortunate.
Yeah, looking at the East, I mean, again, it's those 5 starters. And then I would say Tatum, Bam, Jaylen,
Sabonis
Harden,
should be an all-star, 100%.
Yeah, Sabonis, Harden.
10.
That's 5. So we have 2 more spots left. Would Zach LaVine get on there because of his stats? Would Trae Young get on there?
I would go Trae Young over LaVine. I mean, but that's also just because I think Young's just the better player, to be honest. I think Young has the higher ceiling too. I mean, Young, I know some people hate on Young because he is a horrible defender, and I think people will compare him to Curry. I don't know that that's fair. I still think Curry is still a much better defender than Young, even though Curry is by no means a good defender at all. I mean, you could even make an argument for Colin Sexton if you really wanted to. He's not going to get in, I don't think. But
no, he's not going to get in.
We didn't even say Gordon Hayward, did we? I think Gordon Hayward should probably be an all-star too.
Well, what I was going to say is, do you think Julius Randle should be an all-star?
So if we have that 10, it would be LaVine, Hayward, Randle. I guess throw in Butler in there just because he's so high in the fan vote, and that is 50% of the vote. I would say Hayward should be an all-star, so that puts me at 11. I don't care. I don't know that any of I don't know out of LaVine and Randall or Butler. I don't know if any of them should be an all-star really. I wouldn't if there didn't have to be 12. I think I'd cap it off at 11 in the East.
So you're saying you have Hayward as an all-star?
I would have Hayward as an all-star. Yeah.
I feel like the discussion between him and Randall would be very similar because they're both putting up really good numbers after down years for really both of them, even a couple years, honestly. They're both on like teams that were supposed to be really bad, but have actually been somewhat decent. So that's an interesting argument. I mean, I think Randall should be an all-star. I think just the way he's playing, like if you watch their games, he's just way more improved than he was last year. And Hayward's definitely a lot more improved. I mean, when it's basically his offense, I know LaMelo's there and everything, but it's basically his offense, unlike in Boston. He's way better. But how much effect does LaMelo have on that? Because LaMelo, if you look at his last like 7 games, he's basically averaging like 25 points. I think it was like 8 rebounds, 8
That's
assists.
something I want to talk about in a future episode is how good LaMelo has been. I mean, LaMelo has been looking like he's going to be one of those guys, one of those superstars in the league.
If he can continue to shoot the way he's shooting, then definitely. Because in New Zealand or Australia, wherever he was playing, like he shot 28% from 3. I mean, if he could shoot 33 and plus, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, no, you could definitely make the argument for Randall. I might have Randall in there. I mean, looking at Randall's stats, they are slightly better than I thought they were. I mean, Hayward has better stats to me. I mean, I would prefer to have Hayward's stats to 100%. But yeah, I mean, if that would be 12. I think you could definitely say that. If you wanted to put Levine in instead of like Randall, for me, I would be fine with that. But I think that's a fair 12 All-Stars for the East and West. I don't think this is going to be a year like years before where there were like years where Lillard got snubbed or like a Gobert. I mean, a Gobert might not make it, but this isn't a year where there's going to be like one of those snubs, at least in my mind. Like if Levine doesn't make it, I'm not going to be like, oh, like, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't think there's any like primes. There's not too many people playing well in one conference to be there for there to be like a crazy snub.
Look, out of Randall, Hayward, Levine, and Trae Young, 2 of those guys are getting snubbed. And I don't think, no matter what 2 they are, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You know what I mean? I wouldn't, like, I'm not going to like be upset or be mad that like Zach LaVine and Trae Young aren't all-stars, I don't think there's that much of a gap between those 4 players and whether they're all-stars or not all-stars.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
Well, I mean, I guess that's it with the All-Star. So I guess there's one more of the fan returns and then the players and coaches after that. So I guess we'll see when that comes out. I guess we'll talk about it the third time it happens also. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to see who actually will be an All-Star. And they are playing an All-Star game in Atlanta. So maybe we could do All-Star Game MVP or something like that. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Also, I mean, it looks like there's going to be a dunk contest too. I mean, who knows what else is there? It's going to be. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's basically it for this episode. I guess appreciate everyone who stayed to the end. You probably noticed there's been a bunch of just like atmosphere changes. I mean, I won't even get too much detail into it. But anyways, like. Future episodes, we're gonna be in the studio like we were today for the first like hour or whatever it was, and we're gonna be we still have to change some stuff, so like camera stuff like that, like everything should get better in the future, which is good because we want to just get to the point where we're like all set up and we can just go and just focus on our content and recording rather than everything else. But yeah, I appreciate everyone who stayed to the end. Social media is in the description. Twitter's all that. I mean, we're pretty active on all of it. Spotify, YouTube, obviously. Radio, WQAQ 98.1. Search that up. Tuesdays, 12 to 2. So, I mean, that it's not like that episode wouldn't be on YouTube and Spotify anyways, but if you want to, I mean, feel free. But that's it. Yeah. So we'll be back Tuesday. Yeah.
Also, real quick before we go, last thing. So we have the 2 episodes a week. They're going to be automatically just premiering on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. So there should be no, if you come here at 12:01 p.m., they're going to be here. So yeah, that's it though. But thanks for everyone who stayed to the end.